guys, it's Shanshan here from shanshan.co. I also sell art on eBay. I want to do something a little different today. I'm going to be covering the recent interview Casey Neistat did with Logan Paul. And I think there's some interesting takes on this. So basically, probably most of you don't know because most people aren't 9 years old. That's basically Logan Paul's audience is 9, 10-year-olds, little preteens basically, and they love all his outrageous stunts. He does stunts. He talks outrageous. He's like very emotional, which obviously is helpful on YouTube. But so he doesn't really have a parents or anything older than 20-year-old audience for the most part. So what he did is he kind of dressed like a traditional Japanese priest. Only the priest dressed this way. It's very stereotypical with the kind of the pointy hats, and he put his kind of kimono around, and he was walking around making fun of. First, he made fun of the monks by throwing kind of this money right inside their donation well, which I don't agree with religion, but you really don't need to take them down personally on YouTube. It's kind of you're gonna like stir a lot of controversy there. From there, he went to mocking the police. He would throw like these Pikachus on the police and throw it on people's car, and that's tasteless. But within the world he works in, maybe I could see that. Obviously I wouldn't do that. I don't see the reason for that. But what the real controversy starts off is, so he's known for these stunts, these crazy things. He gets in troubles, but then he kind of took it too far in Japan in the sense, he dressed like this very traditional priest walking around, which looks outrageous. Later, he should have just done himself as far as, dress American, Western, and then, understand the culture, and he didn't do that. He just went there blind. And he purposely went after a lot of cultural shocking things, like, these really stereotypical, almost racist things, which, if your audience is very young, that makes sense. Other YouTubers have kind of dipped into this a little bit. If you look at the early, for example, Liza Koshy, who I think is fairly sensitive, and she's really down the straight and narrow, but she has done some stuff that does look, like you do Jet and all these other personalities. It does look slightly racist, you could say. She's not, obviously, but, you get that impression with some of these kind of Viner-style videos that have become YouTubers. So the whole controversy blows over. He goes to this, what's called the Suicide Forest. It's this forest where a lot of people, they believe it's haunted and there's a lot of spirits. A lot of movies have been made about this actual forest because people go there and they commit suicide. They go into the forest to die, basically, and then they either hang themselves or maybe they take some pills or whatever. And so people feel like you go into that forest and you naturally just, it's kind of like the controversy here in the Bay Area. There's a Golden Gate Bridge, and they have a very low barrier. You can literally just jump over the fence into the water. There's no high fence. And there's been this controversy around, hey, should we put a high fence to block all the suicide jumpers? And thank God they haven't done anything about it, because, you could just jump off any mountain. In the Bay Area, there's tons of mountain passes where you could easily jump off, and so in one case there was a hiker, this couple, and supposedly there was high gusts, and the girlfriend just got blown off the cliff. I mean, it could have been he threw her off, no one knows, but, he's probably telling the truth, but he could have killed her, who knows. But anyway, there's this controversy around the Golden Gate Bridge, so I think it's silly, because if you're going to commit suicide, you're going to commit suicide. You'll do it at your home, or more outlandish, jumping off a bridge. Jumping off a bridge does have the attraction because it's like an instant decision kind of thing. So it does have that pull. There's also, when I was in Madrid, there was a suicide bridge and people would jump off of. And you go there and you're like, wow, it's a good 150 feet. You're dead when you land. It's just, you're not going to be quadriplegic. You're just going to be a splat on the pavement. And, again, it's very low barriers. You can easily just jump over. And they actually call it the suicide bridge in Madrid because of that. But anyway, so this guy, Logan Paul, he's walking through the forest where there's obviously going to be, suicide. He knows about it. He talks about it in the video, and then he goes and then he finds this body. He does blur out the body, so that's blurred out so you don't see who it is. But yeah, to go up to someone that's, you know, obviously chosen this really bad, they've been at a really low point, depressed in their life, and then they make this choice to end it all. It's really kind of a horrible way to expose this for the family. The family's already in shock and they're grieving, and you know, it's just a complete lack of disrespect around the world, besides in Japan, obviously. And it's like a huge problem in Japan that this forest naturally attracts people, and they get the forest, and it just kind of seals the deal, so to say. Like the Golden Gate Bridge, people see the bridge, and if you're really depressed and you've been thinking about suicide, you just immediately, people literally stop their car on the bridge, and then they run out of their car and jump straight off. It's crazy. So that's why they talked about making a fence there, which would be horrible because it's a great view, and you can take these great photos. And other bridges, they do have, like in Berkeley, there's another bridge where you're over the highway, and they have this high fence so people don't throw rocks on cars, which it's probably 1 in a million people would do that, but to stop this 1 in a million chance that someone's going to try to kill someone, you know, they put this thing, which, you know, you definitely want to prevent murder. That's, you know, you can obviously just throw a rock and then run away, and then no one knows who did it. There's no camera, so that's, I understand that, but again, you're not going to prevent people from hurting other people. Anyway, so he finds the body, he films the body, and then he's kind of laughing and snickering, like, oh my god, this is outrageous, but not in the way you would, I mean, you should just kill the video, dude. But he puts it up anyway on YouTube to get clicks. He got tons of clicks, obviously. People are really disappointed. Everyone in Japan, I can't imagine there's anyone in Japan that likes him after this video. So he lost a huge fan base, right? So what are the implications? Besides his personal downfall, a lot of the YouTubers that are, you know, just starting to break through, they're maybe, you know, the 10,000, 20,000, 40,000, 50,000 mark, and anyone related to the stunt genre, say David Dobrik, Lisa Koshy, Top 5, what is this, Alno, I don't know, Top 5 Tricks or something. You know, they're probably at the risk of losing revenue. The guy that drops these huge arrows off a platform and then they blow up stuff. You know, those guys are really at risk because they're related to the outrageous stunts of Logan Paul. So, you know, a lot of people were really mad about that, especially the small YouTubers that really haven't broke through yet, because maybe they're just starting to get ad revenue, and then a lot of advertisers pull off of YouTube. You know, it's kind of like, whoa, this is too dangerous. You know, it's not filtered like TVs is filtered, even though the views are there. My case is, you know, I think there is a temporary hit to this, but at the end of the day, advertisers really go for attention. They go for the views, and they will come back. It's just the nature of advertising. Of course, probably Logan Paul has lost a lot of his advertising revenue, so he's going to have to just do it on merch nowadays. But I don't think I feel sorry for Logan Paul losing his ad revenue, right? I'm surprised YouTube even tolerates him still. That's another thing a lot of people brought up, like, why didn't YouTube pull Logan or even Jake Paul? Jake Paul hasn't done anything that distasteful, so, you know, Jake Paul is right up at the border right now. He still has realized, still enough self-awareness not to go that far. Logan Paul obviously had a lot less self-awareness when he was trying to top his brother and stay on top of you know, he's growing to be one of the top YouTubers of all time. So once you get into that kind of grind, I can see the attraction of getting higher and higher view count, and you do more and more outrageous stunts to outdo yourself from last time. You know, a really interesting take would be if these people that are right close to his in the stunt genre would actually interview him. You know, I mean, Casey's doing it. Casey's a very positive guy. But yeah, I mean, the reaction on it is amazing, because if you look at Casey's videos, you know, he's usually really optimistic in his views, and you know, he does a really solid interview here. He really drills down into Logan Paul, which he should. And you can see this video only got 69%. I mean, that's unheard of for Casey. Casey always gets 95, 99% approval rating on all his videos, and he has millions of views per video, and to get 95% and then already slip to 69%, it's just crazy, because obviously Casey's not endorsing Logan Paul. He's trying to, I don't know if he's doing him a favor, but he's really, you know, giving a chance for Logan to kind of get his story across and see if Logan's really turned a page or not. But yeah, it's a risk to the Casey brand, you know. But it's temporary because people know Casey's not going to do that. Casey does some wild stuff, but he's always been tasteful, and he's always been very respectful of, you know, the cultural norms of each country he's been in. You know, he's jumped off a cliff, but no one's going to care if you jump off a cliff. The goat herder guy isn't going to jump off the cliff, but that he's not going to be offended by that. And you know, Casey really still has a real sense of where the limits you can go. I mean, he did in his bike video where he runs into a cop car, but he's protesting against the cops being unjust. So this is exposing injustice. It's a different form of protest versus Logan Paul just being an idiot to be an idiot's sake. And if you take that too far, like he did, oh, my cat's just stop trouble. And if you take that too far, you know, you really can have, you know, it's really destroyed Logan Paul brand in a way. So what is, you know, what happened to Logan Paul, his reputation? So basically, I think at the parental level, you know, he's lost all credibility. No parent wants their kid to watch it. Is that going to stop kids from watching it? Probably not. I know my parents would say like, "Oh, you're never going to listen to pop radio," and I just kept listening to it, right? And that was the big thing back in my day before the iPod came out. You know, you listen to all the top hits right off the radio, and you would, you know, record them off a cassette tape, dual cassette tape, and then later CDs came out and they replaced it. But you know, that never changed my mind what my parents would say as far as don't listen to this guy or whatever. You would eat up the attention. So I understand. So he hasn't lost his youth audience as far as the 9, 10, 12-year-olds. They probably were shocked, and their parents have, you know, told them, hey, maybe you shouldn't listen to this guy. But they're thinking about it, but not that well, because you're at an immature state at that. You're still a kid. Your morality really hasn't been formed yet. So, you know, you're really going to just follow what's sensational, right? So I don't think he's lost his audience as far as the youth audience. As far as his older audience, anyone that's 18, 20, 25, they're going to be like, dude, that's crazy. We're done with you. You know, he took it too far. So previously, what happened to him? So he had 94 to 99%, almost as positive as Casey, but not quite, because he did do some stunts that people were, you know, outraged out before, but now he took it to a new level. So his apology video was only 44%. So it definitely came off as, I think he was heartfelt. However, it's a very, very short video, and he did explore it more in consequent videos. Obviously, he did interviews on different stations, and so he definitely followed up. But the initial so sorry video really didn't have an impact. You can see he's sorry, but you know, he really doesn't dive into the subject too much. So you know, he just hasn't really taken it in at that point, I think. So there was literally like 1.6 million comments. So I was going to look into it, and I'm like, I'm not reading 1.6 million comments. I'd be here till 3 weeks later, and it's really not worth my time to look into that much rubbish, right? So I think a lot of people initially in that video, they just wrote him off permanently. So he lost a lot of fans right out of the bat, and obviously that was probably shocking to him. And I think he could have improved that initial video if it had been much longer, and he'd gone into different topics of suicide. And he does cover that in other later videos and interviews. So he kind of figured out, oh, maybe I should do a longer video. You know, it was just his initial take. So as far as the initial, the real interview that Casey does with Logan, he kind of, you know, he dives obviously into the topic of the controversy of going to Japan, and then later the suicide video and repercussions from that video to other YouTubers, and YouTube response to this. So I thought that was pretty cool. It was a pretty solid interview from Casey. He definitely drilled into the authenticity of if he was really sorry or not, and you get a, you know, kind of a feel that he's vibing, you know, and he's really feeling sorry. On the other hand, you know, he kind of, like, Logan's kind of tries to pull him into his side of the story that, you know, hey, I'm behind the lens, I got to make all these videos, and, you know, I got hung up in all the hoopla, and I'm only 22, and he's like, oh, you know what I'm feeling, and, you know, Casey says, like, yeah, I kind of get that, but then he was still, like, you know, he was still hitting him, but because he acknowledged that, you know, it's just the natural response. If you're with someone, you're going to acknowledge them how they feel, not necessarily that you're going to do that, right? So I think you have to really put that on the table, that Casey understands the feeling in the sense that, the fame can take you somewhere. But because Casey was just doing wild videos but not insulting people, it's a whole different style of video, right? So Casey was always out there as far as like snowboarding in New York, but it's not the end of the world, right? I mean, if a car runs him over in the street, then it was on him. It would have been a sad thing. But he was his own risk he's taking. In the other case, Logan Paul's, directly insulting people, putting people's reputation on the line. So it's a different sense of audience, and obviously that really bit Logan in the butt. I think, maybe Casey will have some damage to his brand, but I think it'll be temporary in the sense that, there's a one-time interview with this guy. Maybe he does another one in another couple months, but I think Casey's trying to do the right thing in the sense that, give this guy a chance to recover and really apologize and maybe see if he's actually in a new space or not. This is my cat, Troublemaker. He literally causes trouble, like interrupting the video. That's his nature. Anyway, so Casey, I think it was a good interview to do. People really do have the question whether Logan Paul has learned his lesson. I think the real issue with Logan Paul is he got his start doing all this silly, really slapstick type of humor with stunts involved, and to stay true to his brand, he really has to, he feels the need to continue this, and he really doesn't have much else besides this really zany personality, and there's really not much. He feels like he's in a box, right? That's his brand. He has to go continue this. But yeah, it's just, he maybe should do a talk show. I mean, it's really hard because he did build his brand on that, but on the other hand, it's like, dude, you screwed up. You got to change your direction. What do I think of Logan Paul's reaction? So, I think he did make an apology, but then it's like Casey says in the very beginning, because Casey had waited like a whole week to kind of digest and really think about this video, what he really wanted to say, which I really respect Casey for waiting a whole week, because you really need to digest the material, is see if how you want to really roll with this, how you want to edit it. And he did edit it minimally, which I think you should do in an interview, with this type of interview where it's kind of an expose and you figure out what the person's feeling, and you don't want to edit it too much because then it's just you're spitting propaganda versus what the actual person's saying. So hats off to Casey for doing a really honest interview there. So my feedback is, Logan Paul apologizes and he says kind of the right thing, but then he goes off message. So you'll see at one point he's kind of like really puts his hand to and he's really pressing really hard. And to me, this signifies just with body language that you're like, oh, what did this guy say? What did my coach tell me to say? And then he kind of relaxes. He's like, oh, I said the right thing. I'm good to go. But the problem is at some points he feels really apologetic, and there's only so many times you can say sorry, right? So over time you kind of you feel more and more disconnected from an event the farther out you go. It's the way our minds work. Anything that's very painful or sad, you're going to distance yourself from it. And anything that's happy, you'll retain that. So if you go back in the past, all Logan Paul's going to remember is, oh, I had a great time, and then all of a sudden my audience left. I know I have to feel sorry, but does he still feel sorry? I don't know. So the one thing that disturbed me as you're doing this video on, which has to do with the suicide video, but at the same time you're doing a fight, announcing the fight, which, Casey was trying to lighten it up, make it kind of all around like, hey, this is where you were, this is what you're going. So you're kind of transitioning, right? You're doing a fight. I think that's just to dispel, like, everyone wants to beat up on Logan. So by doing an actual real fight, then KSI can hit him and everything, and everyone's like, oh man, he got hit. Oh, this word. To me, it's almost a stunt to take away the guilt, which is clever, but I don't know. I don't know what I'd do in the case of if I was Logan Paul. But anyway, I mean, he's trying to keep his brand going, right? But the really sad part is at the end he's wearing... So first the thing that really bothered me, visually, just visually, which I noticed after watching it the second time, was he has on this thing called Maverick, and that's his brand, so that's what he's been promoting for a long time. Which, you know, it is what it is. It's very consistent with kind of the stunt brand of his brand, but if you're going to talk about a suicide video, you don't have Maverick like, hey, I was a Maverick, I went in the forest, no one else would do this, and it's kind of reinforcing the message that, hey, I was a badass, and then, hey, they caught me, what am I going to do? He should have worn like what I'm wearing. Just wear a solid black shirt. Just wear a t-shirt. It's consistent with the youth brand, and you know he had a black shirt on, but it says Maverick on it, so it's like, dude, are you really feeling it, or are you more interested in your image? Another comment people made was, you know, Casey has sunglasses on. Why does he have sunglasses? What he's trying to hide. No one can see his expression. You know, this is a brand decision on Casey. He always wears the sunglasses, and if you notice with Casey, you know, the glasses kind of make him look cooler, I would say. And he's done it in all his videos. Also, his eyes are just slightly off. My dad had a similar issue. So if you're talking to me, you're like, is he talking to me? Is he talking to the camera? Is he talking to me? Is he talking to the camera? So by putting on the glasses and it hazes out which the direction, if he's looking at the screen or not, he looks like he's really concentrating on his viewer, which he is, but because his eyes are kind of a little bit jittery sometimes when he talks without the glasses. Like, he naturally just likes to talk, you know, kind of like this, and he's all around guy. But if he has the glasses, it looks like he's focused on the room, which he is focused, but some people just have that kind of jittery eye, I would say. So, you know, I think it's, you know, Casey uses the glasses for that point to kind of make it look like he's always focused on the viewer, and I respect that. I think that's, you want to come across visually that you're listening, and he is listening. It's just, you want to show visually that you're listening. So this is Casey being, showing respect for his audience, that he's actually listening and showing respect, and then people think they don't have a disrespect feel for him. You know, if you're in person, it's fine, but on video, you want to have like your logos, your background. You don't have a crazy cat like this that non-stop troublemaking, which is what his name is. But yeah, you definitely you don't want to be image conscious. So one of Logan Paul's reaction, so he makes an apology. It seems heartfelt. So he's talking about, you know, he grew up, he got thrown into social media, and he had this huge flash of success and just build. And so he got like this narrow tunnel vision, and Casey agrees with him on the tunnel vision. That's why Casey, so he's like, oh, Casey, I quit. And so then he's like, oh, why did you quit? And what was the motion? What was your demise? And Casey's like, hey, dude, I'm not in your box. Which I totally agree with. Casey's not on the downfall. Maybe Casey had flatlined at some point, but I don't think Casey has flatlined at all. He's continually risen over the years, and he's always been a positive, optimistic. He's never had a problem with his brand, basically. And the only problem he had with his brand earlier was he wasn't doing a regular vlog to get the growth. So now he's got the growth, and you know, hats off, he's there, right? So one of the answers Logan Paul is, he says, "Oh, I'm vegan, dude. You know." So that's kind of the counter, I would say, to hurting animals. Obviously, that's why you become a vegan mainly. Some people do it for the health benefits, but it's usually more the hurting animals, and then the health benefits are kind of on the side, obviously, because you can just be a vegetarian or a pescatarian or eat meat. Like I usually do, like eat meat here and there. I try to limit my meat intake, but do mostly vegetarian. So I think that's a fairly healthy balance. You know, vegan is obviously probably the most optimal, but very strict, because you really have to figure out your proteins, and you know, you still have to maintain your protein, right? So just eat a lot of soy, beans, which isn't that hard, right? But anyway, so he's saying vegan's like his answer to why he's changed, which, yeah, that answers the tasting the rat kind of video, and he could have answered it like, hey, I've answered that, but how do you handle suicide? It's not like, I changed my diet, and it's like, well, were you eating people before? No, dude, you were just having steak. It doesn't answer how you've addressed the suicide issue and move forward in your videos, right? So he totally bypasses that. And then he says he has his girlfriend that's very mature, which is great. You know, he has his girlfriend, but he's 22. I mean, how old is his girlfriend? Like 40? Unless she's like a 40-year-old, 50-year-old, she's not really going to have the maturity as well. He can seem very mature for her age, but you're still 22, 23. You know, at that age, I was drinking, going to parties. I was going to school as well, but you're very youthful, and you still have that sense of invincibility, which obviously Logan is still living, right? That sense of like, oh, I can take on the whole world. Your body hasn't really changed yet, so you're still in your prime of your youth. So it's, I don't really see that. He made a video, so what Logan Paul did is he did the So Sorry video, and then right after that he kind of kicked out of Japan video. So he shows he's kind of harassing outrageous costumes, and then he did another video, Suicide Be Here Tomorrow. So that was like the real meat and potatoes answer to the apology. So then he actually shows a suicide victim, and he doesn't introduce the video, he just kind of rolls the suicide victim, so you don't really know it's even a Logan Paul video. I think people got it because they know that, and it's just showing him listening to Suicide Victim, which is good. You know, and it makes a good point as far as, you know, what happens at the Bay Bridge. You know, people just run off and jump off, and this kid was 18, he jumps off, and as soon as he jumped, you realize, no, I want to live, why did I jump, you know? But obviously you can't tell you, but luckily he survived, right? And then, so then he's doing a video with Logan Paul. So I think that was kind of cool because you get a real sense of, hey, this is what a suicide victim feels like. So let's address the topic. So I think that was pretty good. So another thing is, like, how have artists handled this in art on suicide? I think it's covered in art occasionally, and generally in the modern era, artists are usually very upbeat. You know, the society's very upbeat. The economy's good. So when the economy is good and generally people are living very well, they don't want to focus on death, right? Or if the economy, say, you know, up and coming like second world, third world countries, they're kind of, there's a lot of really depressing, miserable stuff. So they want to have colorful things in their life to distract them from the misery of life, right? So, you know, artists definitely, they usually, they're like, no way, I'm not going to do it, cross out, right? So there's only a few artists that have covered, like, say, suicide or death. And usually it's the greatest artists in the sense that, you know, their reputation's solid, and they do a couple of, you know, death, like, I want to say El Greco did it at the end of his life. It was more typical in the Middle Ages when kind of there was all this non-stop death of the Black Plague, right? It was hitting it, and so there's all these scenes of, you know, Christ being hung up, and he's bleeding all over the place. It's just crazy. If you go see these old 13th, 14th century art, it's just really intense. You know, about the crucifixion and how religion's so impactful in life. And it's because so many people are dying, so people are turning to God to get away from the death, right? I mean, it probably didn't save them from the Black Plague, but, you know, they want to answer, why did my brother die? Why did my aunt die? It's unfair, da 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 da. And of course it's unfair, but, you know, if you got a huge plague going around, it's just, that's the nature of it. You know, my generation went through that a little bit with, you know, we were born in the 70s, and then, you know, just right when we're starting to hit puberty, get everything excited, you're going to be like, wow, we're going to be like the 70s and live it up, you know, like they did in the 70s, and then, boom, AIDS hits, you know, the crack epidemic hits, and then it's like, dude, drugs are crazy, that kills you, you know, sex can kill you. So at that point, people just kind of lock down. There are, you know, some crazy people that said, like, hey, let's keep doing it, it's not going to happen to me, but, and generally most people became very thoughtful and thought, hey, you know, I don't want to sleep around too much, it's going to kill me, right? So that really impacted my generation versus the generation right before that. AIDS was just starting to come out. It was totally unknown in the late 70s. It was completely unknown. There might have been a few cases, but people just really didn't know. They didn't know what it was. And so it was just completely unheard of. People were swapping their wives and all this craziness, and that was just really a thing to do. And then the 80s, it just really locked down. It was, you know, the Reagan era. It wasn't just because of Reagan. It was really, you know, being promiscuous led to death. So it was kind of like a no-brainer. It's like, dude, I don't want to die. I'll just have like 1 or 2 girlfriends. I don't need to go crazy, right? So other artists that have covered is like, say, Warhol, Damien Hirst. They've covered, but they're the exception to the rule. Most people do not cover it. So how have I covered suicide in my art. I haven't really covered suicide, but I have covered death. So um, one of my earliest pieces in college, when I was just learning, I barely had paint on the canvas. It looked terrible, right? Early artwork always looks really bad. It takes like 10 years until you get really good, really focused. Even now I'm still developing as an artist, and I'm still not like really where I want to be, but I think it's better, a lot better, right? Anyway, so my dad, he got throat cancer, right? And he was going through chemotherapy, and it really hit me hard. And then he actually let me drive his truck, and my dad never let us drive the truck. It was always his car, and then here's this piece of junk car for you to drive, but you're not touching my car, right? So I knew in my heart that, wow, my dad is really bad if he's letting me drive his car. That was just like, whoa. And I would drive him back and forth to the hospital, and you really go through your mind. It's like, man, what if my dad dies, man? It's like, since my parents were divorced, early on, my mom took us away. So, I hadn't really got to know my dad that well. The whole childhood had been ripped away from me. Getting to know my dad from 10 on to like 18 right now. I was back living with my dad, and it was like, oh man, I really don't even know my dad yet. And that was really tough, right? Another really, two other things that really happened that was really hits you hard as a person is in high school. I knew this guy, we were friends for a while, and then we kind of broke apart, and then he got involved in a gang, and then the gang did terrible things. They beat up this person almost to a coma. So it was like, oh my God, I'm never being friends with this guy. And then 6 months later, he goes and there's this girl in this neighborhood that I knew, and my brother knew, and he got together with his stepdad or something, and then they raped and killed her. And it was like, oh my God, what is this? And that really broke my trust in humanity. At that point, I was like, man, I can't make any friends. And then I was in Poland, and I met this other guy. Who was a friend of my mom's, and we met him. And at first, it was kind of fun. He likes to drink a lot, and I'm like, okay, Poland, they drink a lot, right? But he was drinking crazy amounts. Like, he drank like a whole bottle, a fifth of vodka by himself. It was just insane amount of liquor. And we went on this camping trip, a lot of drinking, fun, but we're not driving, so whatever, you're drinking for a couple of weeks. And then we came back, and we go on these trips like, oh, let's go to my country house, and he'd drive, and he would get drunk, and we're driving down this narrow passageway in a forest, and he's going like 30, 40 miles an hour. It's like, dude, this is fucking crazy. And we're in the front seat, we got our seatbelt on, but dude, he can hit any of those trees, and he was going around corners, sliding around, barely miss a tree. Then he eventually hits a tree just a little bit, right? So it made a dent like that in the car, and I'm like, oh my God, this guy's freaking nuts, right? So on the way back, then the next day he has a hangover. He's like, oh, I'm going to drink more vodka, show you what a real man does, and kills your vodka. And so his girlfriend says like, no, I'll show you how strong a Polish woman, she drinks all the vodka, right? And he's like, see, that's what a real woman does. And I'm like, dude, you guys are fucking crazy, right? And there is a sense, like if you have a really bad hangover, if you have, say, vodka, and then you have a little bit chaser, it'll take you back to drunk field and take away the hangover. So it kind of balances out your system temporarily, but then you're still going to hit the hangover, right? So it's really a stupid thing to do. But anyway, so she gets drunk. She obviously pukes her guts out later, and then they drive back, right? And at that point, I'm like, dude, I'm done with this guy. Never again. And sure enough, like a year later, I'd left Poland, I was back here, and he was still driving drunk all the time. And his parents, they were PhDs, it was totally crazy, right? So he's speeding through Warsaw, and in that time, it was the transition from communism to capitalism. The police, when they pulled you over, you could bribe them out of anything. So literally there was no sense of real punishment, right? So he was speeding through the city, 45, 50 miles an hour, and he was drunk, and then he hit someone, and he totally killed him. And so he went to court and jail, and he went to jail for 5, 10 years or something. And he just literally ruined his life, right? And that leaves a mark on you. That leaves you like, damn, you just can't really trust people. And to this day, I still don't trust people. So that leaves really deep marks. So yeah, that's my impression of it. So I haven't. So some of my artwork is dark, and some of the titles are definitely dark. Which probably isn't smart for branding and selling purposes, but that is what it is. So should artists cover suicide? I think maybe once, twice. It's obviously not going to be a hot selling topic, so you probably Most artists aren't going to be brave, and most artists aren't even going to cover it, right? Just because they don't want to screw up their commercial success. And especially if they're doing like puppy dogs or balloons or, you know, really light felt kind of art. You know, how do you make that jump from painting really light felt stuff to death? You know, it's the same problem Logan Paul has. He went from light felt, silly humor to, oh shit, I screwed up and did a suicide video, right? So, yeah, so most artists are not going to cover that. I think the artists that do cover it successfully, they're going to be like the artists that are going to go forward and be remembered for a decade. So most artists are going to be afraid they're going to do only commercial art, which I understand. It's hard to make it as an artist when you do commercial art. But the ones that can do that and do it successfully, say Damien Hirst, he cuts a shark in half. He did these disembodied animals. It's kind of like shock art versus is it art? But that type of stuff is really going to stick in the art history books. It's just a matter of fact. You know, it's done so seldomly nowadays that the people that do it and they do it successfully, like Damien Hirst, they're going to leave a mark. Everyone else that decade probably not going to leave a as deep of a mark. You don't necessarily need to do all your artwork on it. I wouldn't recommend that. You do need to do. It's good to do something that's commercial and just easy to look at, because that's what most people want on their wall, right? So, you know, I wouldn't do it as like a project where you do hundreds of these. You know, I just do 1 or 2 works, maybe a couple studies, and that's what my recommendation will. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. You can subscribe below, and hope to let me know your thoughts on this video. Thanks, guys.